All right, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to IEA webinar number 29. So this morning, we would want to engage in a different conversation as not the usual conversations most of you are used to. But before we go into what we are doing today, I would like to introduce the Institute of Economic Affairs. So the IEA is a think tank based in Nairobi, Kenya, and what we do is we carry out research and use our research findings to engage in policy conversations for the betterment of the country. And our conversations are global, regional, and of course, local. So my name is Winnie Ogejo, and I work at the Institute, and I will be joined by three of my colleagues. That's Fiona Okadia, Moses Mushiri, and Emmanuel Washendo, who will be running today's conversation. So a bit of housekeeping. You notice that today we have our microphones on. We have our microphones. Sorry about that, guys. So you notice today we have a bit, we're doing things a bit differently. Your microphones are unmuted. This is because today's, we are not having presentations. We are actually going to be engaging in a conversation. So you have your microphones on mute, and when we will be going to the conversation part, you will have an opportunity to unmute yourself and engage in what we will be having a conversation on this morning. So the IEA has been implementing a project on advancing issue-based politics, fiscal transparency, and accountability. And as part of the project, what we hope to achieve is to have youth engagement on public policy issues. And the public policy issues we hope to focus on are around public finance management. So we'll be having conversations on inflation, budgets, taxes, and debt. And why do we think this is important? We think this is important because we want to have an opportunity to assess knowledge gaps around the four areas that I have spoken to, and have also an understanding on what areas of policy interest the youth. So that is why today's conversation is largely being attended by youth. So we hope that you will have an opportunity to just express yourself around those four issues, telling us the key areas that you think you need more literacy around. And with that knowledge, we will then be able to, as the Institute of Economic Affairs, to come up with what we are calling an literacy pack that we will be using to engage in trainings. And this literacy pack that we will be coming up with will be just a handbook of some sort that will help us have different engagements in the course of the project with the different youth, and just gauge their understanding, and also give them an opportunity to gain further insights on different policy issues. So in as much as today we are having a conversation around inflation, budgets, taxes, and debt, we hope that you will have an opportunity to also raise areas within public finance management that you think the IEA can come in and carry out trainings and also have further conversations with you around. A polite reminder that this conversation we are having today is not a political mobilization. What we are trying to do is to have a literacy engagement and literacy empowerment. So we humbly request that we refrain from using political phrases so that we carry this conversation in a very productive way. So if we have instances where we have political phrases, we are sorry. We will have to ask you to leave the meeting, or we'll have to excuse you from our end from the meeting. So remember, we are not having a political conversation. We just want to empower you with economic knowledge around the four areas, and for you to also be in a position to get back to us and tell us these are the areas that you think we can come in and carry further conversations. So that is it for this morning. We are not having presentations. We will be engaging in a Q&A. We will be asking questions, and you will have an opportunity to respond. And as you're responding, please do not hold back, because remember, we are also assessing knowledge gaps. So feel free to give whatever responses, as long as they are, make sure that your responses are actually apolitical, and that will then give us an opportunity to come up with what I have indicated earlier, the economic literacy pack. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first conversation carrier, Fiona Okadia, who will be speaking and raising questions around inflation. So Fiona, please, karibu sana.
Thanks, Winnie. So my name is Fiona Okadia, as you've heard, and I work at the Institute of Economic Affairs. So I lead the session on inflation. And the first question that I would pose is, what do you know about Kenya's CPI? So at this point, you can just raise your hand and then I will pick you, then we can continue. So feel free to speak. Just everything that you know about Kenya's CPI, and then from there we will lead the conversation. Abigail, are you trying to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry, I am not actually, sorry.
Please mute. Okay, guys, I'm sure you know, because I saw most of you are economic students, I'm sure you know something about Kenya's CPI, either what the current index is, how many items we measure. So it could be anything. It's a very broad question. All right, I think I'll choose someone randomly. Spencer Muhonja, please tell me what you know about Kenya's CPI.
I was supposed to suggest the same, just keep randomly.
Sorry? Yeah. Spencer, anything? Yeah, you can also type in and then we can read out. I don't see any response. Thanks, Vivian. The year-on-year inflation as of July was at 4.1% and a monthly inflation of 0.1. Okay. Anybody else? Doreen?
So let's remember that the objective of this exercise is we can see that the people want to understand what's going on with the economy, and we're trying to respond to the desire amongst you for platform-based, issues-based politics, and that starts with just understanding the facts. So at this stage, we want to know what you understand, and so come back to your own lives or the lives of people around you, and think what those lives look like from the perspective of the questions we're asking. So in this case, inflation. What do you understand by inflation? What is inflation? And what thoughts do you have about the effect of inflation on your livelihood, or the livelihood of people around you, or on Kenyan citizens? This is not a test. Answers, whether right or wrong, are welcome.
Fiona, we seem to have a question on the chat box.
So I guess when it comes to inflation, there's a big knowledge gap because no one seems to know anything about inflation. Winnie, I think we can proceed to the next bit.
All right, so thank you, Fiona, for that. So guys, the whole point here is we are giving you an opportunity to ask whatever questions you have about these 4 areas, and that's inflation, budget, taxes, and debt. So don't hold back, just feel free to engage. And if you can't voice it, you can actually just type it in the chat box and we'll be able to have a look at it. So Emmanuel will take us through the budget segment. Emmanuel?
Thanks, Winnie. So the budget, I'm going to rattle off some questions and I want you to chime in with your responses. You can write your responses in the chat box or you can lift your hand up and speak. So what is the budget? Why are budgets necessary? What are budgets used for? How are budgets generated? Not with those four. I introduce more. All right, I will just call you. I give 2 seconds for volunteer before I volunteer you. Doreen William, do you mind telling us what the budget is, the national budget? What is the budget? I see Wesley is asking what was the question. I will also put them in the chat box. Start with those four. Yes, Doreen, do you mind telling us? You can speak, or you can write in the chat box. What is a budget? Why are they necessary? Okay. Any other takers? Let's see. I see Stephen Kabugi. Can you tell us something? Tell us what is a budget? Why are budgets necessary? Thank you, Doreen. I see your response. Maybe you can go further and explain why you think budgets are necessary. Stephen? Yes,
Hope you can hear me.
yes,
Okay, so
public budgets,
uh,
state budget,
a budget,
the state budget
budget.
specifically, yes.
A national budget is basically the structure of how funds collected within the nation are to be used, in my opinion. And why they are necessary, they give structure and reference for a nation. For example, in a fiscal year, you're able to know how money was allocated, and it is possible to know whether you've achieved what was targeted by the budget. That is why I think budgets are necessary. What they're used for is basically allocation of, okay, so the money that has already been collected from the citizens of the nation has to be used to develop the nation, and of course to curb the challenges of probably such as externalities and such. So that is what budgets are used for. So the money is allocated through budgets, and finally how they are generated through the budgeting process, which includes public participation, and of course other steps, including going through the parliament, going through the president and such. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Abigail also raised her hand. Abigail, would you like to say something?
Okay, my definition of what a budget is I think it's the national allocation of monetary resources to the necessary sectors in a way that maximizes efficiency.
Okay, I will introduce the next set of questions so we can.
Emmanuel, before Japheth has his hand up.
Okay, Japheth, please.
Okay. My definition of budget is just a tool of managing country's finances by guiding economic policy and ensuring resources and allocation of national policies. And why is it necessary is a country without a budget, a government will spend blindly and risk overspending, and also the issue of priorities in what to do and what not to do, what is urgent and what not is urgent, and also just to make the many of resources equally or equitably. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Japheth. Okay, I will now introduce the next set of questions. So, who proposes a budget? Who assents to the budget? What are the organizations involved in the budget process? Can citizens participate in the budget process, and if so, how? And finally, what is the difference between revenues and expenditures? So I've sent the questions to the chat box for reference, and I invite any takers. I see Amanda. Amanda, would you like to tell us something about the budget? Who's proposes these budgets? Who attends? What are the organizations involved in the budget process? How do citizens interact with a budget? How does the budget, whose will does the budget reflect?
Beth, you can have a go.
So thank you. On the first question, I believe that it's the CS for Treasury who proposes a budget. And then on the second question, who attends to the budget? I believe it's the president, because it's the one who sends the appropriation bill into law. And then on the organizations involved in the budget process, all state corporations, parastatals and departments, and also ministries, and also the judiciary, because at the initiation of the budget process, I believe that they all send their estimates. And then we also have the parliament that is also involved in debating the finance bill and also passing it. And then on how citizens can participate in the budget process, this is through public participation. The public participation window organized by Parliament. That is when the finance bill are tabled by Parliament. The public, either through different organizations presenting their findings or opinions on the bill, and also through the MPs, and also just presenting their various memorandums on either the finance bill or the appropriation bill, and then the difference between revenues and expenditures. I believe revenue is the money coming in, while the expenditure is the money going out, the money that you're spending. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much for that response. Okay, thank you. I think we'll move to the next section. Thank you, Winnie. Over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel, for taking us through that session on budget. So I would now invite Moses to take us through the taxes segment. Moses?
All right, thanks, Winnie. Well, we've tackled budgets, and as most of you have pointed out in the chat box or by speaking up, we have budget is the spending part of government. Now we look into taxation, and you'll need to also have the budget conversation in your head as we do this. So the first question will just be a yes or no. I would wish that everybody types in the chat box, and then from that I'll ask the next one. And so to start us off, I just ask, in your own view, should we pay taxes? Yes or no? Well, if you wish to give an explanation, well and good, but a yes or no will just do. Well, I can see yes, I can see no. Let's get them to 25. Once I have 25 counts, I'll just proceed to the next one. It also helps me confirm that we are here. Okay, I believe others are typing. A majority are saying yes. We have a no. Okay, as we wait, trust me, I need all of us to participate because that's more effective. As we wait to have everybody type in, allow me to ask one of you who said yes, why you said yes. Firstly, do you mind to tell us why we should pay taxes? Oh, and these are not trick questions. There's no wrong or right in this case. Wesley? Okay, Wesley says taxation is the primary method of raising revenue for government, and that's why he believes we need to pay taxes. Okay, does everybody else agree to that? Okay, fantastic. So I'll just march to the next question, and also this is a yes or no question. And the question is, do you think everybody in Kenya pays taxes? Does everybody pay tax? Again, it's a yes or no, and then we'll probably hear from one of us from both ends on why they think yes or no. Do you think everybody pays taxes in Kenya? Do you think everybody pays taxes? Yes or no? Okay, well, let's keep the yes or no's coming, but allow me to ask Japheth. Japheth, if you don't mind unmuting, could you maybe give a little explanation on your answer?
I think everybody pays taxes. For example, all of us pay taxes in VAT when we buy something. But now when it comes to pay as you earn or those other form of taxes, then we'll find there are some people who are not paying. But when it comes to general taxes, then everyone pays taxes. That is in VAT.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thanks, Japheth. Doreen said no. Doreen, do you mind saying why you think not everyone pays taxes? Okay, maybe as we are waiting for Doreen, maybe to type in. Amanda, do you mind explaining your answer? Okay, Doreen says, I think it's because they're usually tax reliefs for those who do charity work. Amanda, would you want to give an additional explanation? So I'm also being told that some people cannot type in the chat box. So if you can't and you want to give an answer, you can raise your hand and then I just select you to do the same. Okay, fine. So a majority of us believe we should pay taxes. Some of us believe that everybody pay taxes, and others believe not everyone pays. So there are some people who don't participate in the tax paying business, if I may say. So to further test the knowledge on taxes, so I'll ask another question and also type it in the chat box. So how many types of taxes do you know? You could mention one, you could mention a couple, depending on how many you know. So this one you can do by raising your hand or typing in the chat box, and then I'll select you. What types of taxes do you know? Anyone? Or maybe put in another words, if yourself you pay taxes, what type of tax do you pay? Anyone who has an idea on the type of taxes? I think at some point somebody alluded to them. Go ahead, Beth.
And I know that taxes can be classified in various ways. The first one that I remember is, by incidence, who is paying the taxes, the direct taxes and the indirect taxes. I remember that direct taxes are the ones which you pay directly as an individual or as a company, the corporate tax and the income tax. And then the indirect taxes, they are collected by, let's say, a middleman, okay, an intermediary, and then they are paid. For instance, VAT, they are collected by, let's say, by the supermarkets, and then the supermarkets file their returns. And then also the nature of the taxes. For instance, progressive tax, it's the one which increases with the increase in income. For instance, the one who earns more pays more tax. And then regressive tax, it's the one which I don't, okay, perhaps you may correct me on this, but if I remember correct, it's the one which let's say applies to a larger group of people, or especially low income earners. Yeah, for instance, the VAT, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
All right. Stephen, thanks, Beth, for that. Okay, as we wait on Stephen, I can see in the chat box, Emmanuel says direct and indirect taxes. Spencer says we have income tax, we have VAT, we have property tax. Abigail says we have indirect taxes and gaming taxes. Stephen, maybe give it another try. I'm not so sure whether Stephen can actually be able to speak, but feel free to type in the chat box, Steve, and check on your network probably. So coming from the fact that we believe we should pay tax, some people don't pay it, others do, to types of taxes. So the next thing is to check whether we we understand some of how these taxes come about, what makes them legal, or what brings them to enforcement. But before that, allow me to read Amanda's comment. So this was on the question on whether everybody pays tax. So she says, I think not everyone pays taxes because while many Kenyans contribute indirectly through VAT and excise taxes, direct tax payment remain far from being universal due to some systemic, economic, and social factors. Thanks, Amanda, for that. So the next question here becomes, what are the underlying tax laws in Kenya, if there is any? So what laws govern taxation in Kenya? So again, you can type in the chat box or you can raise your hand and then I'll select you to actually proceed and tell us. So what laws govern taxes in Kenya? Or taxation, that is. Anyone? The question is, what laws govern taxation in Kenya? Whether you know one of them, more of them. Okay, maybe I should ask, do we know any tax laws in Kenya? So let's use yes or no. Do we know any tax laws in Kenya? Okay, see Beth's hand is up. Go on, Beth.
Something is up with my chat box. That's I'm raising my hand this much. But for laws that govern taxes in Kenya, we have the Constitution of Kenya, and then we also have the Customs and Excise Duty, the Custom and Excise Act, dependent on the type of tax you're talking about. And then I believe that the finance bill, once it's passed into law, once it's assented into law by the president, it also governs the tax remittances that are made by either corporations or people in different sectors. Yep.
Thanks, Beth. Anybody else? Abigail, do you mind elaborating what you mean, yes, no?
Okay, just to clarify on what I meant by that sentence, I meant yes, I do know some tax laws in Kenya, and this law is that no tax can be imposed on the people of Kenya without the go-ahead by the parliament. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Anybody else who would want to contribute towards that? Okay, fine. So, the next question here becomes, well, we have tax laws and some of them have been mentioned, but I think one of the most common thing every year we hear of a finance bill. So, in your own understanding, the landscape of taxation, what do you think is the role of the finance bill? What is the role of the finance bill in the taxation landscape? Anyone who has an idea? Go on, Emmanuel.
Well, thank you, Moses. I think the finance bill basically is just I would say a proposal that outlines how a government is going or is able to raise its finances, let's say through taxation and also through deficit financing, where it takes debt from both the private and also the external market. And I also think it also outlines on how the government is going to spend the money that it has collected. So the expenditure side of the government and also the raising of the money side of the government. Basically, it's just the moment it's a bill, it's still a proposal. So when it passes, then I think it becomes a law when it's passed by the majority in the parliament.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Geoffrey? Go ahead, Geoffrey. Okay, maybe as we wait on Geoffrey, Abigail, you can go on. Abigail, if you're speaking, you're still muted.
Yeah, the chat box
I'm
is
sorry.
unavailable for me. That's why I wanted to use the chat box, please.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. My definition of what I think, okay, to answer the question, what is the role of the finance bill? I think it's a plan by the government on how it's going to raise revenue for that given financial year, making room for amendments, repellation of taxes, and maybe introduction of new taxes based on what the plan is for the government on that particular year.
Thanks, Abigail. Okay, I read what is in the chat box. So Spencer says, and this is what is the role of the finance bill in the taxation landscape? So it's a proposal by government that government presents to parliament on how to raise revenue. Wesley says it's the structure through which government plans to raise revenue to finance its budget. Amanda says that the finance bill can introduce new taxes. And then Julia says, for economic management in that through the finance bill, government uses taxation to influence economic activity. Fantastic. Thanks for the answer. So, well, going past the finance bill, one last question on taxation. Which are the key organizations in the taxation space in Kenya? Or which organization do you know is involved with taxation in Kenya? One, Beth.
KRA.
Thanks. We have KRA. Spencer says KRA. Wesley says KRA. Emmanuel says KRA. Is that the only organization? Jeffrey says also KRA. Okay, so most of us are well conversant with KRA. Is there any other organization that influence or is involved in determination of taxation in Kenya? Abigail says parliament. Amanda says county government. Julia says national treasury. Okay, fantastic. To cap this, allow me to ask a very generic question. Between government and people, who do you think should be determine how much taxes people pay? Okay, Wesley says that parliament and the people should determine what the amount of taxes paid. So the question is between government and people, and government here to mean government administration, and people to mean people outside the government. Well, that might be quite vague, but do you think people should be told how much to pay, or they should have a say on how much they should pay? Okay, Geoffrey says government, because I believe with the right government in place, it should make decision for the people. Wesley believes government and people. Julie also believe both. Emmanuel, you want to say something? Go on.
Well, Moses, for my case, I think it's the government, because when we look at the principles of taxation, where we have equity and equality, I think the people themselves cannot determine what is the best equity threshold or what is the best equality. So I think the government of the day is the determining factor in whether we've met the equity that is deserved in taxation or the equality that is supposed to be administered. So the the faction that holds much weight in this case is the government, because also at the same time they're the representative of the people.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Well, thanks for participating in this section. I think we will guide in the next one. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so thank you, Moses, for taking us through the segment on taxes. So we are moving to the segment on debt, and we think this is important because it has a link to what in the segment on the budget. So Emmanuel will be taking us through this segment, and then we will give our way forward after that. Emmanuel?
Yes. So thanks. Now, as we enter this part, I want to invite flowing conversation. I mean, maybe you have your non sequiturs about debt. Please invite them in and let yourself go crazy. So, debt. The first set of questions, I will start with the basic. What is debt? How is it incurred? Who assents to debt? Actually, we start with those three. How is debt? What is debt? How is it incurred? Why is it necessary? Who assents to public debt? And remember that try and depoliticize your comment.
Geoffrey, do you want to say something? I can see you've raised your hand.
Think to yourself, for example, you are taking a step as a citizen to actually uphold your duty. You're taking the first step and you're bringing with you the very veritable skills in economic skills that can allow you to cut through the noise and say very potent things about the state of your country. You're not being tested. You are going out there and someone will even say it's trying to save the world. Okay, Spencer. Yes, Spencer, please. Yes, let me. Okay. Please give Spencer permission to speak. I'm trying to yes. Oh my. Okay, I think you can speak now. Michelle or Justice, can you? I've tried to give her permission.
Spencer, you can try and unmute yourself again. Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I think public debt is money that the government owes to external lenders, could be a different country or maybe like the IMF, and probably why it's important is to fill in on where we fall short with the revenue in the country.
Great, great. Thank you, Spencer. Now, because we're also interested in understanding what you are curious about, maybe there's something about the debt that enrages you, that has given you sleepless nights, that piques your interest, that you would want to see reversed. So bring it out. Japheth? Yes, can you please chime in? What is
Okay,
debt?
okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, for me, public debt is just a money that government borrows to fund its expenditure. Since we, as a government, we have, and the expenditure is not limited, and so most of the time the budget is always a deficit budget. So they need to the money we collect from the country, the revenue we collect cannot sustain the expenditure. So sometimes government borrows the money from lenders, that is internally or externally, to cap the expenditure. And then how it is incurred, it is incurred when the revenue is insufficient, of course, and it is necessary to finance development, stabilize the economy, or handle emergencies. And the decision is made by the executive, then they propose it to the legislature, and also the control of budget is involved. Thank you.
Great, great. We have total policy scholars here. That's good. Okay, I'm going to bring out the next set of questions. How does public debt arise? How does it fall? From whom is it borrowed? Who are these lenders? Why do nations borrow debt? Who is affected by the debt? What are the effects of the debt? Beth, did you say something? Chime in.
So how the public debt rises. I believe it's through an increase in the financial gaps. For instance, with regard to, let's say, you might find that the total budget exceeds our revenue, so we have to borrow, and so the public debt continues to accumulate and increase. And then how it falls, okay, I believe it's through payment. Like I recently heard that a significant percentage of the revenue collected goes into paying some of these debts which are in the maturity stage. So okay, that one I don't know if it's falling because we're still borrowing, but oh well, I stand guided. And then from whom is it borrowed? We have the international organizations like the IMF, the World Bank Group, the EU, and then also through treasury from the public through the treasury bills and bonds. Those are the lenders. And then why do nations borrow public debt? Why do nations borrow public debt? I don't quite understand that question. And then who is affected by public debt? It's the public. And also, the coming generations, because now these debts have to be paid, and most likely they'll not be paid in our lifetime. Anyway, some of them. And then the effects of public debt, I believe they include decreased allocation to development projects, And then I believe also the cost of living rises due to increased inflation. And then another effect, I believe that it sort of reduces the attractiveness of the economy to foreign direct investment. Yes.
Great, great. Yeah, I think, and I see here Spencer saying that the economy is affected, so everyone. Now, maybe if Spencer or someone could introduce some precision to what she said. Let me see if there was Japheth. Okay, let me invite Japheth to elaborate on that and perhaps say what he had in mind.
Okay, I think public debt rises. Public debt rises when the expenditure exceeds revenue, and falls when government repay, or when there is structure, that is they negotiate with the lenders about the interest, those sorts of things. And also when they reduce borrowing and the lenders include domestic institution, that is like the banks, commercial banks, the citizens, the stocks, the exchange, the foreign stocks, whatever, those things. And now we have the external ones that include the IMF and the China, and now the famous Eurobond, and also I don't know if the public-private partnership is part of it. And then nations borrow only when there is fund deficits, and or maybe they have large projects that they want to complete, and also when they have emergency, like now we had Corona back then, and now the government needed to borrow. And the main people who are affected when the government borrow, these are majorly taxpayers, the business, and also the future generations. And the public debt can be boosted through development if well managed, but if excessive, but if the debt is excessive, it weakens the economy.
Great, great. Thank you, Japheth. Yeah, you've written a blog there, the outlines of, could go on the side and write something up. Emmanuel Maobe.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I would comment on who is affected by the public debt. And from this, I think I would distinguish the effects, both the positive and the negative. And for my case, I think debt is really not maybe an Achilles heel to the economy, but in a way, debt is a very instrumental tool to the economy, especially the government, when it wants to, let's say, increase the aggregate demand. It can facilitate massive massive deficit spending, and through that, the overall aggregate demand in the economy can be raised, and this can be used as a tool, especially during recessions. And I also think that generally good debt that is sustainable is a very good tool to the economy, and it's generally it's a better weapon, and it's a better instrument to be used. Good sustainable debt. So debt starts to become dangerous, especially the moment it starts breaching its sustainable levels. Let's say the common measure that they normally use, for instance, is the debt to GDP ratio. Economists have it in as a common agreement that they're about 65% debt to GDP ratio is quite sustainable, or below 60%. So that is always used as a metric to maybe measure the sustainability or to ensure sustainable debt levels. So the moment the gap starts getting breached, then that is where we can have we can have disastrous situations such as, let's say, inflation starts kicking in, wage pressures goes high, and other catastrophic events that just manifest in the economy as a result of high debt pressure. So there are a lot that I can add to it, but I choose to stay short with the few comments that I've added on that.
Great. Emmanuel, are you on Twitter? You should be. And you should
Not
be
really. My social
out
media
there.
footprint. My social media footprint is so low. I'm not a social media fan. I choose to stay so, but I think I'll open one.
Yes, yes, you would be doing the public a great duty. You learn something along the way. So yeah, you have a lot of knowledge. This is a good start. Let
Thank
me
you.
go to the last batch before we move on to the next section. Okay, this how is debt repaid? What are the risks associated with incurring debt? What are the risks associated with domestic debt, and how are those different from those associated with foreign debt? And finally, I think this has been mentioned throughout, the key organizations in the debt landscape. I will invite Julia to say something. All right. Doreen? Oh, Emmanuel. Yes. Okay.
Well, I'll say something about the risk associated with domestic debt. To my view, the main risk I would say is the crowding out of private investments. So when the government raises more debt from the domestic market, it crowds out the private sector, and that in return has a negative correlation to the private investment. And we can also deduce this from the private sector shrinking. That's an empirical evidence from our Kenyan sample, where we see a private sector that is shrinking, and this can be attributed to the increase of domestic debt that leads to crowding out of the private sector by the government. And that to me is one of the major risks associated with domestic debts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel. Doreen? Okay. I will bring that session to a close and invite Winnie to take us to the next stop. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for taking us through the session on debt and relating it back to your earlier session on budgets. So as we had earlier indicated, this was just an assessment on knowledge gaps, so that even as we proceed to come up with the literacy pack, we know which areas to focus on, especially within the 4 areas. So that said, if you check on the chat box, I have put in three questions that we would appreciate your response on to help us with further engagement with the youth. So the first question we are asking is, which public policy issues around PFM would you want to know more about? So if you could just respond to that and let us know in the chat box before we exit. And then also, which of today's topics would you want to know more about? Which ones should we put more emphasis on, even as we come up with that literacy pack? And then if the IEA was to conduct a training on public policy, literacy, and issues, which issues, how would you actually want that training to be conducted? So if you could let us know that, so that for planning purposes and moving forward in the course of the projects, how would you, answering these questions would actually help us better plan ourselves. So if you could just take a minute or so to respond to the 3 questions in the chat box, that would be great. But that said, I mean, we are trying to create a space where youth are actually getting very knowledgeable on public finance and public policy issues. So that even as you continue to engage on public policy issues in the country, you are engaging from a point of knowledge. So we hope that this session has actually enlightened, though as much as it began on a low, it picked momentum, as we've seen, especially with the last 2 sessions, which is a good thing. So the whole idea is for you to be in a position where you can engage from a point of knowledge. So you letting us know which areas you think you need more knowledge on is actually a good thing for us at the IEA. And just to remind us, thank you, Geoffrey, for your response. Please just keep those responses coming in on the chat box. And also to remind you, I believe most of you here are students. The IEA is a membership organization, and part of the membership categories that we have is one that gives students an opportunity to join. So if you feel as a student you would want to join the IEA as a member, please feel free to reach out to the IEA. Please feel free to reach out to the IEA communications team, Michelle and Oscar, and they will be very glad to have you and guide you on how to join and become a member of the IEA. So that said, we really hope that this session has been insightful. In as much as it was more of a Q&A, we were trying to pick your minds on these issues. We hope that you have gained some insights and you are able to moving forward, engage the IEA. And please follow us on our social media pages. We are on X at IEA Kenya. We are on TikTok. We are on Facebook, and we are also on Instagram. So please feel free to follow us on those pages so that you can get upcoming events and an opportunity to interact further with the IEA staff. So that said, I think we are good to go, but please, the 3 questions, the last 3 questions, take a minute, just type in your responses. It would be of great help to us at the IEA. And should you have any further questions, feel free to write to us at IEA, and we will be more than glad to have an opportunity to interact with you and to respond to your questions. That said, with the questions responded to, you may leave at your own pleasure. Asanteni sana.